Okay, so we are now at part E of the spending plan lesson in your money management unit. When we left off last time, we had just discussed all the steps to creating a spending plan. We started with how often are you going to track your expenses? Once a week, twice a month, or once a month. We also discussed finding out how much you're making, writing that down, and then identifying your expenses and adding that up and making sure that your income, what you're making, is bigger than or more than your expenses. We discussed what happens if you need to make adjustments. If you're paying more than what you're making, then you can reduce your variable expenses, or you can work a little bit more to increase your income, or you can reduce your unnecessary expenses. We also talked about some options, some smart options if you're making more than what you're actually spending. So a couple things you can do is you can increase your pay yourself first savings fund. So those are kind of what you're working on for your SMART goals. Those are also just an emergency fund kind of expense. Also, you can reduce any loan obligations, because when you pay your loans off faster than expected, you're going to reduce your income and reduce how much you actually have to pay back to the lending companies. I touched a little bit about actually following a spending plan. If you can follow your spending plan, that's the goal here. If you don't follow your spending plan, you're going to find yourself in pitfalls and not using your money wisely, either not having money left over at the end of the month, or maybe just having too much money left over and not really sure what to do with it. And the last thing to do is just to monitor your spending plan. It's always okay to make changes. Changes are a good thing. It means that you and your life is changing. So making changes was the last part. So we've gone through the steps of how to create a spending plan. Now it's going to be your chance to create a spending plan for a girl named Maya. So if you look in your notebook, you should have a sheet titled Maya's Spending Plan. And here's a little bit about her scenario. Maya is a senior in high school. She works part-time. She's expected to pay her car loan and a few other bills. Help her set up a spending plan to cover her expenses and also allow room to save money for a trip and college tuition. So here's what we have to discuss as we're going through this task. What are Maya's goals? How much is her income? What are her fixed expenses? And how should her variable expenses be adjusted to fit into her income? So when you look at your task, you will see a little bit more of an explained scenario. So let's read the scenario that's written on your task sheet. It says Maya is a senior in high school. She earns $8 an hour, working about $25 a week at the local grocery store. About 30% of her pay is deducted for taxes. So even though she makes a certain amount of money, 30% of that at the top is taken away for taxes. Maya also earns about $15 each month on interest on savings. So that's an extra income for her. Maya still owes money on her used car. She has to pay $235 a month, but she doesn't pay rent because she lives with her parents. She's responsible for these expenses every month. Her cell phone, about $35 to $45, gas, $40 to $60, and auto insurance, about $50. Maya likes to play video games and listen to music, so she frequently buys games and music. Maya typically buys her own clothes and electronic gadgets, but she also receives gifts from her family for special occasions. One of Maya's short-term goals is to take a trip to visit her grandparents right after graduation. She expects this cost to be about $1,000, and she already has saved $500. A long-term goal is to attend college over the next 4 to 5 years at the local state school. She plans to pay part of the tuition with scholarship money from her savings. So far, she's set aside $7,000 for her college fund. So your directions are to create a monthly spending plan for Maya using the information provided. You're going to use the spending plan worksheet, which is the next page, to build this plan. So let's take a look at what this plan looks like. The very first step, it says, is to list Maya's anticipated monthly income sources and amounts, and then calculate the total income she expects to receive in a month. Okay, so Maya works at the grocery store. And when we look up above, she earns $8 an hour for 25 hours a week. $8 an hour, 25 hours a week. So if we want to figure out how much she makes a week, we would take $8 and multiply it by 25. So 8 times 25, that's $200 a week. But we want to figure out how much that is per month. So $200 a week, there's 4 weeks in a month. So now we've done $8 times 25. We'll multiply that $200 by 4 and get that she makes about $800 a month working at the grocery store. What's another income that Maya makes each month? So I want you to pause this and try and figure out on your own what the second income for Maya is. Maya's second income is her interest. It said that she makes about $15 in interest each month. So that interest is probably from some savings that she has set aside. So when you put money in a bank, the bank uses that money, but as a kind of like a thank you for trusting the bank to use their money, they give you interest each month. So her savings is growing by $15 each month. So Maya's total income, what would that be? If we take $800 that she gets working at the grocery store and add 15, you would get that her income is $815. Not too bad for a high school senior. That's actually pretty great. So we've listed Maya's income. Step 2 is to add the expense categories and insert how much we predict that she's going to have to spend in each category. Remember that we have to also include that pay yourself first amount so that we can build up Maya's trip fund and her college fund. And then once we identify all of the expenses, we're going to calculate the amount that she needs to cover the expenses and her savings goal. All right, so let's start with those pay yourself first categories. There were 2 of them. I want you to look up at the top and see if you can't figure out the 2 pay yourself first categories. What 2 savings goals does Maya have for the future? Well, the first pay yourself first category that Maya is saving for is a trip. She needs to save up $1,000 for the trip, and the scenario says that she already has $500 of that saved. The second category is her college fund. She wants money for college, so she saved about $7,000 and she needs to continue saving so that she can pay for her college tuition. So let's try and figure out an appropriate amount. She has $815 per month. How much could she save for her trip and her college fund? Well, we haven't really identified the other expenses yet. So for right now, I'm just going to add $100 in each of these amounts. $100 in each of these amounts, that's acceptable. That would mean that in another 5 months, she'll have enough money for her trip. And for college, in about 10 months' time, she'll have another $1,000 saved. So that's acceptable for right now. As we go through our other expenses, we might be able to edit these. We might have to add some more, or we might have to reduce how much she's saving. Okay, so let's look at some of her fixed expenses next. So the fixed expenses, again, are the expenses that she has to pay for. There's usually a specific amount of money that she's going to have to pay for these items. So when I looked on that other page, the second paragraph is going to tell us a lot about fixed expenses. Maya owes money on her used car, $235 that she has to pay a month. That number is not going to change, so that is a fixed expense. She doesn't pay rent, so we don't have to worry about that. And she also has these expenses. Cell phone, $35 to $45. Now, if there's a range here, that's not a fixed expense. That's going to be something that changes. It's a variable expense. Gas, $40 to $60, another variable expense, and auto insurance is $50. That's not going to change each month, so that's another fixed expense. So already we found 2 fixed expenses. We found that she has to spend $235 on her car loan and $50 for insurance. So let's add that to our expenses category. $235 for a car loan and $50 for insurance. So I've added those fixed expenses. Another pretty fixed expense is going to be the taxes that have to come out of her grocery store work earnings. So she earned $800 a month, but 30% of that has to come off out of taxes. So 30% of $800 is $240. So this girl has to pay $240 off the top for taxes. So that money has to go towards that. Oh man, so we have 100, 100, 200, and 200 with 50 on there. We are adding up real quickly. There's a couple variable expenses that we have as well. So let's look next at our variable expenses. See if you can find the items that are in a range. So the two items that were in a range for Maya were her cell phone and gas spending. So her cell phone, she spent between $35 and $45 a month. And whenever we're creating a budget plan, it's best to aim high. So I took the biggest number. For gas, it was between 40 and 60. So again, I took that $60. So there are two more categories that we're looking for. We're looking for her entertainment category and her clothing category. She really enjoys entertainment and games, and she buys most of her clothes herself. But I want you to right now just stop and calculate how much we have spent so far this month. So count up all of her expenses and see what you get. Right now, I'm getting that Maya's total expenses is $830 for the month. Well, she only makes $815 each month, so we have already gone over with our expenses. We've gone over by $15. So before we can even add in entertainment and clothes, we probably should go back and edit some of her expenses. The best place to take off expenses would probably be for her trip and her college fund. So we're $30 over. We need some money other places. So we can probably take off a little bit of money here. For the rest of this, you're going to do this on your own. So you've seen how we can start creating a budget. The entertainment and clothes are some fixed, not fixed. These are some variable expenses that we can change per month. But we're going to need to take off some money from the trip and the college fund so that we can spend some more money on entertainment and clothes. We also need to reduce this by about $15 right now so that we don't go over our $815 spending limit. So the rest of this I want you to do on your own. Change these numbers around. Specifically, you're going to work on the trip and the college fund so that you have enough money for entertainment and clothes. And then I want you to write your total income here, which we already said was $815. Once you redo the expenses, you'll put your total expenses here in that total expenses category, and then you're going to subtract the two, 815 minus whatever your expenses are and the difference. We don't want a negative difference. You want it to be a positive difference. That way you know that she's not going over. Okay, so that's what you're going to do on the rest of this. So pause this, finish that, and then we'll come back to this video. So now that you're finished writing Maya's spending plan, we're going to continue on just for a few more minutes. But I do want to point out that there is no right or wrong way to balance out Maria's spending plan. As long as her income covers her expenses and Maya's spending needs and goals are in that final plan, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Even if she's only saving $25 for her trip and maybe $50 for college, that's still saving. And since we don't actually have the specific goal that she was saving for, anything that you write is okay. The last thing I want to cover is what happens if you don't have a spending plan. Well, you could come up short on money before your next paycheck. So coming up short means you don't have the money you need to pay for what you need. You're also more likely not to reach your long-term spending goals. For Maya, if you don't follow or if she didn't follow her spending plan, she might not have all the money she wants to go on her trip or to save up for college. It adds stress. If you're struggling to keep up with payments like a car payment for Maya, that can be very stressful because that could result in you getting your car taken away. You may need to give up something you planned if your money needs to be used for unexpected emergencies. So without a spending plan, if you've got an unexpected emergency, you might not be able to go see that music concert. If you are giving up independence, if you really need to rely on others for financial help, that's another thing that can happen without a spending plan, is that other people will take care of your finances. And your finances are really important for you. Okay, so that was this lesson. We are done with our spending plan. Congratulations.